One day, this guy Reid, he's at work, and he gets a phone call, and it's his wife, this woman Quinn. And she tells him she's been kidnapped from their home at gunpoint by a group of Albanians. And she says if he calls police, they'll shoot her. So anyway, he calls the police, and the police go and search Reid's house, and they find this ransom note. Basically says they took Reid's wife, and he needs to give the kidnappers 50 grand or they're going to UN alive her. And Reid, he's scared. He doesn't know what to do. Next day, the kidnappers force Quinn to call Reid a couple of times. She tells him that the Albanians want him to drop off the $50,000 at two different Chick-fil-A. So Reid gets the money, and he goes to the Chick-fil-A to drop it off, and of course, he's working with police. So undercover cops follow him the whole way there. Then the Albanians show up to the Chick-fil-A. But they can see that undercover cops are low-key all around, and they get nervous, and they just keep driving. So that drop didn't work. So then the next day, the Albanians get Quinn's phone, and they text Quinn's mother. They now want Quinn's mother to get the money from Reid and then go and make the drop, mostly because they think she hasn't been compromised by police. Of course she has. She's working directly with them. But the kidnappers want her to drop it off in the parking lot of a Joe's Crab Shack. Throwing away. Quinn's mother goes to Joe's Crab Shack to drop off the money. Undercover cops are following her the whole way. So she gets to Joe's Crab Shack, she drops off the bag of money in the parking lot, and then some random college guys who just happen to be walking by find it, and they're like, hey, look at that. We found a bag of money. So then police have to go and get it back from them. So then that money drop didn't work either. And by this point, the Albanians are pissed, and they try to schedule another drop-off, but that one fails too. And it seems like these Albanian kidnappers are never going to get their money, and that Quinn might not survive this. Until after 3 days of trying to get this 50 grand, the Albanians suddenly just give up, and they just dump Quinn off in some local parking lot. And her clothes are all torn, and she's freaking out. And so, police bring her in, and they talk to her, and they ask her what happened. She tells them she was kidnapped from her home by some Albanians. They tied her up, and they took her to a warehouse where they essayed her. Then they took her to a motel where they put a pew to her head, and they forced her to call Reid and ask for ransom money. Then, she started suggesting to police that maybe Reid was in on the kidnapping and maybe he concocted this whole elaborate plot because he wants her dead. And if that isn't crazy enough, then Quinn's story changes a little. She had originally said 3 Albanians kidnapped her, but now she's telling police it was only one guy who did it, and she starts pointing fingers at this guy who we'll call Boss. Boss is a local car mechanic, and he's not Albanian. He's actually from Bosnia. So police go and find Boss, and they bring him in and they question him. And that is when Boss drops a bomb on everyone. He tells police he's never kidnapped anyone, and not only that, he has the receipts to prove it. Listen to this story. Here's what really happened according to Boss. So Quinn and Reid's marriage had been on the rocks for a while. And one day Quinn meets this mechanic, Boss, and they really hit it off. And soon they become friends, and then they start smashing. Now Quinn wants to leave her husband for Boss. So together they come up with this wild plan. They're going to call Reid and say that Quinn was kidnapped by some Albanian thugs, and then they'll demand he pay them $50,000 ransom. And then they write a fake ransom note for Reid, and then they leave it. And then they go and they stay in a motel for 3 days. While they're at the motel, the whole time they're sending texts to Reid, telling him where to drop off the ransom money. So there were never any Albanians. There was never any kidnapping. They made it all up to extort 50 grand from her husband. Now, at some point during their 3-day crazy scheme, Boss, he gets worried that if he and Quinn get caught, Quinn will turn on him and blame this whole crazy scheme on him. So Boss gets a recording device, and at the motel they stayed in, he secretly records her talking about this whole fake kidnapping plot. Anyone in their wild team think that they can come and send it to this. And surely enough, by the time their scheme is all over and Quinn is being questioned by police, she suddenly turns on Boss and starts blaming it all on him, saying, "No, I'm innocent. He really did kidnap me." So then Boss busts out that recording of her discussing the plan, and he gives it to police. So they ultimately arrest Quinn. And Boss hears her mugshot, and here's his mugshot, and they're both charged with extortions. She's sentenced to 7 months probation, while he is sentenced to 6 months probation. No, they got off kind of light, but eventually Reid files for divorce. Good for him.